Welcome back to Fusion 360 tutorials. In this video, we are going to learn how to do an exploded view assembly. So we're going to start off with our wheel assembly open in place. And the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to add some hardware to this, some socket head cap screws. So we're going to go up to the insert menu, and we have some options down here to insert some parts. And we're going to select Insert McMaster Car Component. So when we select on that, the McMaster Car website is going to pop up, and we have many options. If you scroll down the left-hand side, you will see lots of hardware there. Many options. The first thing we are going to do is we're going to select screws and bolts. We're going to start narrowing our selection down. So we want a metric. Want a metric screw because our wheel assembly is a metric assembly. And our thread size, we are going to change our thread size down to an M10. So if we scroll through here and select our M10, and that's going to narrow down some other options. So we can keep scrolling down here, and what we want is we want to select a length that's going to work for us here. So we're going to select an 18 millimeter, and our head type is going to be socket head, and our material type we're going to select stainless steel. And what that does is it keeps narrowing our options down here. So it has given us some different options on here. We do have an 18/8 stainless and a sealing type socket head cap screw, but we're going to stick with this first option here. And if we scroll across and down a bit, we're going to select this product number here. So it's a link to that screw. And what we can do is download the model. So we're going to expand this, and we're going to select the 3D step model. So that's a standard type of 3D model. And we're going to select the download button. And when we select the download button, Fusion will insert that screw into the assembly, just like we had any other assemblies. And I'm going to just rotate this a bit, get it kind of in the orientation we want it. And I'm going to put it off to the side here. And I think that is good for now. So we're going to select OK. And so we have one screw in there. We're going to have to put 4 in there. So we're going to use our joint command J shortcut key, and we're going to select the bottom edge, edge here, and we're going to match that up with the bottom edge in this countersunk hole. And we are going to make sure it's not going to be rigid. We're going to use a revolute option on there, and we're going to select OK and back to our default view. And we can see that we have added that screw in there. So just going back to our default view, and I'm going to continue to add the remainder of these screws in place. So I'm going to select that screw there. I'm going to select the move copy and make sure we select our create copy. And just going to drag that over there, select OK, the same thing again, or we can select this one, this screw this time, select our move copy again. So now we have all our 4 screws in there. I'm just going to constrain those all the exact same way that I constrained this first screw here. Now we have all our 4 screws in place. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create our exploded view. So we're going to go up to our toolbar up here, and we're going to select animation, and that's going to open up a new menu. And as you can see, not too many options under there, so it's not as confusing or as difficult as you might think. So we do have a storyboard down here. which we're going to control some of our motions. And we can have multiple storyboards, so we could create multiple animations or explosions all in this storyboard or animation mode. We can also zoom in and out of our storyboard to get a closer look at our timeline. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to start to move these components into an orientation or position that we would want to see in an exploded view, which is very helpful for creating installation instructions or installation videos. The first thing we want to do right now is turn this view off. So we're not going to include our different zoom levels in our explosion or animation right now. We can add that later. So we can turn that off, so you will see the little pause button up there, and when we zoom in or zoom out, it's not going to add that to our animation. So ideally what I want is I want all of these parts off of this base for starters. I want them all to be kind of in line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the first button down and the bottom, or click shift, select left click the first button or the first model, and shift click to select them all. And I don't want to touch my base, so I'm going to control click that, and you'll see all the other items have been highlighted. Then I'm going to select my transform components, and you're going to see similar move dialogues or tools up here that you're familiar with. I want to move this straight up vertically. I may want to look at the front side of the view to see where I want that in relationship. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move that up to -40 millimeters, and I can control that in the dialog box, and I can add multiple moves on here. So I could go up 40 and I could go left 20, but I'm going to keep that straight in line with the base plate for now. Select OK, go back to my home position, and you can see that has been lifted off of the base plate. If I decided that I needed to move that or transform that further, I could right click on my object down in the timeline, and I could select edit action, and I could make additional adjustments to that. The other option I have in here is trail line visibility. So what that does is that's going to add some dotted lines onto that transformation. We can also right click on there and select show hide trail lines. We can't see the trail lines in this view right now because I'd only selected the caster bushing, which is on the far side. But we will see what those trail lines look like with further movements. So now I'm going to make some additional adjustments to this. I'm going to move the support brackets, both of them. I will have to do those individually. So I'm going to move those horizontally out of the way, and as well I'm going to move those screws with them. So I will select my angle bracket and select transform, and I'm going to drag that out. I think 110 millimeters looks good. And if I selected the trail line visibility, you will see that trail line is showing my movement of that piece. If I select split transform, that's going to show both movements. So it's going to show that this has been transformed up and transformed that way. I'm going to select OK. I'm satisfied with that one. Going to select my next component, which is going to be this angle bracket transform, and I'm going to move that one 100 and same distance. I'll go 110 millimeters that way, and I can turn on my visibility there as well and select OK, so you can see that my assembly is being broken apart into a more exploded view, and down in our timeline it is adding these motions down here. So that one was the last one I added, and that was the last one I added. So all of these in that first row, this is our timeline. So these are all moving together from the time period of 0 to 1. So the next transformation I'm going to do is the bushing. So I'm going to select my bushing and select my transform, and I'm going to drag that. I will drag that 50 millimeters, select OK, and I will do the other bushing, which is on the other side, and select my transform, and I'm going to move that the exact same distance, 50 millimeters. That way, select OK, and I'm going to transform my axle now, and I will select the transform for that, and I will move that up, zoom out a bit so I can move that a little bit higher, and 100 millimeters. That way it looks good. Now the last things that I want to transform are my screws. So if I want to see what this is going to look like in an animation now, I can select play, but we can make some of those modifications afterwards. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select those 4 screws, and I'm going to do each one individually as opposed to selecting all 4. Might make it look a little more realistic when it comes to an animation, but we have to remember this is a view that we're going to see in our exploded view drawing. So we want to make sure we capture everything. So of concern right now is probably going to be my back bolt there, which I can't see. So I'm going to move that one first and see what that translation distance is so that it's going to be visible. So selecting, that's my bolt there, my corner bolt, select my transform, and I'm going to drag that up to there, and that was 90. Select OK, transform that. That is going to be 90. I'll do all 4 of those bolts, keeping the same distance. So it is getting a little bit crowded in here. I might want to move my plate down, or I might want to move this one up a bit. So I'm going to go in and edit this transformation and shift that one just a little bit higher. So I don't want to select that and drag that up. That's going to add an additional transformation. What I want to do is I want to go edit that transformation. So I'm going to select my cancel so that I'm not in my transform components anymore, and I'm going to look for my caster axle in my timeline, and I can drag this up a bit. Caster axle in my timeline, and it is this one that I want to edit there. So I want to edit this transformation here. So I'm going to right click on that, select edit action. And I'm going to drag that up just a bit so I can see all that information in there. Now back to my home, I'll drag this back down, and I'm going to look at the front view just to make sure I've got those screws. So I did not move some of those screws up, so I'm going to have to adjust these screws. Not sure what happened to those screws. They were up 90, 90, and verify that those are all in line. So I can see the front view or right side view of my exploded component there. And if I was to create my assembly, this looks fairly good. I may want to bring these screws, do some additional transformations to bring them out in the X plane. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this image to create an exploded view drawing. So now we have to go open up our previously created assembly or wheel drawing that we've already created, and I'm not going to create a brand new drawing in this this drawing here. I'm going to add a second sheet. So it has been updated. You can see this description here has been updated, so we're probably going to want to go back and take some of that information out of there. We should maintain that down to one line. But for now, we see sheet 1 of 1. But if I go down to the bottom here and select Quick Add, that is going to add an additional sheet. So that has been updated to sheet 2 of 2. And if we go back to the first sheet, we will see that says sheet 1 of 1. So working on sheet 2 of 2, we are going to add our base view in here. So we're going to select base view, and in the dialog box, the drawing view dialog box, instead of creating selecting our model representation, we're going to select our storyboard representation that we have. So when I drag that in, that looks like a pretty good scale. I'm going to change that to a 3/4 scale. Looks like we have a little bit of room in there. Might be able to make that a little bit bigger. And everything else looks fine. We can keep that as a non-shaded view, or we could change that to a shaded view. Typically for an assembly drawings, maybe if it was a marketing drawing, you may want to keep that as a shaded view. And so now we have our assembly drawing that is in an exploded view. So I'm just going to save that now before I go any further. And what we can do is we can add all our balloons onto this again, but we would have to add our table onto this. So we're going to select table and automatic, or parts list. Automatic would probably work. And we're going to drag that down to there. And let's make some adjustments on here for the size of this table. So I'm going to select that table, move it over here. Hope that dragged the column. Just want to move that whole table close to there. And we're going to drag that description out. And once again, we're going to move that table so it snaps down to the bottom right-hand corner there. And what we want to do is go through and open up one of those screws, and we're going to change that description just so it says socket head cap screw in the description, and change that number to -007. So I've quickly gone in and adjusted the part number and the description, and it left a huge space, or very wide row height. So I did actually just delete that table and resubmitted that parts list table in there again. And it has, as you can see, added all those balloons in there. So just like we did in the previous assembly, we're just going to go through and actually modify some of these so it does look a little bit cleaner. We may want to change, for instance, this bushing. It's not really clear where that's pointing to. So I'm going to select that node, and I'm going to move that over to this bushing. And it does present nicely if you do keep your balloons on on similar angles. So item 1 here, which is the base plate, obviously I don't want that pointing over there. Somewhere down here would be more applicable. Trying to keep some of those angles roughly close, and the wheel looks fine. I'll bring that balloon down, and the screw, I think we're going to move that over here just to make that look a little bit neater. We don't like to have these leader lines crossing over objects. So this leader line is crossing over that shaft. So we're going to change that and try and keep that leader line again similar to this angle. And we'll do the same with this shaft as well too. Just makes things look a little bit neater when we can keep some of those lines parallel. It's not imperative, but it does provide a little bit nicer effect. So we do have all our leaders on here now. We might want to spread this one out a bit just to keep our balloons outside from the objects. And I'll make some small adjustments on these to make sure these are looking nice. It's a little bit picky, but it does look nice for the viewer. Makes it a nice, easier read. So we do have all those in there. All our balloons are added on there. The next table we're just going to do is going to add our revision table again. So select our table, revision history, place that up there, and we can leave that information as is, or we can, it's the same as the first page. So these will always be the same as the first page. Or every page should be on a multi-sheet drawing. Every page should have the exact revision table on there. So everything looks fine on there. Title block is all complete. Same as the first page. That information is transferred over. And we may want to show some foreshortened edges on there so we can see some of those radiuses. Or if you like, you can make that into a shaded object as well. I'm going to leave it like that. Hit save, and now we are complete. Have completed our assembly, exploded assembly, and we can go back and change, remove these lines here. That we went back to our model back here and go back to our animation. And we can, this is for the caster support. We can hide all the trails, and the other caster support, hide all the trails, hit save. And hopefully that should be updated in our assembly drawing. So open up that drawing, refresh that, and we should see those lines gone. So hit save, and we are done our exploded view drawing.